Welcome, everyone. Well, first I want to thank our viewers. We've been getting some very interesting response to this ongoing segment that we've been doing, a look at technology. And of course, we went right to the top with Anise and Associates, and Ray Appy, who's the president and CEO, has been kind and generous enough to spend all these weeks walking us through all of these things. So welcome, Ray. Nice to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Sure. Some viewers, and we're going to get to this at the end because we're going to give you a chance to get in on the action. But the last couple of sessions that we've had, first one we talked about how do you assess what your needs are. Then we went into, last week, we went into the total cost of operation. And there's a third piece to this puzzle, which is return on investment.
Right.
Ray, just give us that overall view. You're a business owner. You're looking to say, okay, I've got the assessment. I know what I need. I've got a sort of a handle on the total cost of operation. What should I expect as return on investment, or where should I look to guarantee that I'll get a return?
Very good. If you don't mind, what I'll do first is
Sure.
is put this from the perspective of the solution provider. So from like Anise and Associates.
Right.
It is always our goal, if we can, to provide a return on investment calculation for a client. Because that, obviously, from our own selfish perspective, that helps justify the purchase and may move things along. But I think it's also really important for the client and their business to be able to look at what they're doing and understand what the financial impact is all the way through the life cycle of a system to know whether or not is this actually going to cost our business more, is it justified, maybe it's going to cost less. And so we're always looking for can we make it cost less in the ROI. So the things that we're going to look for, okay, so last week we talked about total cost of ownership, and I went through a number of details about how you look at a potential new technology system or program, break it down, and then add it all up and see what's that going to cost over the expected life of the system. Maybe that's 5 years. If it's a phone system, it may be longer. So for a return on investment calculation, we're going to then go back and look at everything that the client's spending on the system that they have today.
So you've got a comparison.
Yeah, so we can
Yes,
try to do almost an apple-to-apple comparison.
Yes, right,
Get that as close as we can. So let's take a phone system example, because that's been kind of a theme in some of these sessions. So if a client has an aging phone system, maybe it's 15 years old, maybe it's 25 years old, they're paying money every year to maintain that system. Maybe they're replacing old handsets because the handsets are dying. That may be part of what they're spending each year. If it's an old PBX, they may be replacing the call processing blades, or they may be fixing the voicemail system on a regular basis because things are failing because it's old. They may be updating some wiring here or there because the wiring is old, out to the phones. And maybe they have a paging system for the building, and that's old as well, and they have to. So there's all these costs that go into maintaining that old system from a software and a hardware perspective. And then there's all the costs that they incur to connect that phone system to the rest of the world. So we call that the PSTN, the Public Switch Telephone Network.
Okay.
The PSTN gives you dial tone, so when you pick up the phone, you actually can dial a number and get somewhere. And you also get your long distance from the PSTN, from maybe multiple providers or a different provider than the dial tone. So what we want to look at is all of the cost of the system itself and what they're spending to connect to the outside world. And add all that up, look at it across a year, divide it by 12, figure out what the monthly is, and then take the new system, the new phone system, that whole total cost of ownership that we talked about, and maybe break that into like a 5-year or a 7-year program, and start getting the client to think about what it would be if you convert this to an operating expense. So maybe take advantage of some financing. Money's cheap these days in terms of interest rates, so think about an installment purchase or a lease to own with a dollar buyout at the end. Make it fairly longer term so you can stretch those payments out 5 or 7 years. And what we'll do with the estimate on the new system is we'll put in all of the costs for the client to procure the hardware and the software and to install it and to train their users and get it up and running. And then we'll add in there the annual operating costs, so the maintenance fees, software upgrades, and maybe some consulting support each year to keep everything moving. And then kind of annualize that and then break it into a monthly and compare that to what they were spending in the past. And we have on a number of situations found, especially amongst institutions and schools and places like that, where maybe things haven't been kept up to date so much, that we can often find a return on investment when we break it down to a monthly operating expense versus a capital expenditure. So that's usually what we're looking for. And when we're able to show that, even if the client doesn't decide to make it a monthly OpEx, if you can show it that way and they can see, wow, I can't believe that I can get this $500,000 system installed up and running maintain for 5 years, and over the course of that 5 years spend less than I'm spending today on this 20-year-old system that I had.
Right.
So that's really a nugget. You know, we like to find something like that because that usually really helps the business move along, and it really helps the customer. You know, so that's what we're really trying to do.
You know, Ray, you mentioned life cycle. And the example of a phone system is a great one. It's one that any business owner can relate to. And sometimes the updates in the phone systems are things you don't really need. I don't need to know when it's time for lunch. All I really want to do is make a phone call. But, you know, that aside, the life cycle for the different elements involved in the construct of what you're talking about. It could be computers, it could be phones,
Sure.
it could be servers. And then you mentioned too that I hadn't thought about, which are things like support and also consulting fees. They sound similar to me, support and consulting fees, but there is a real difference, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
What's
yeah.
support?
All right, so let's break down support. Talk about software. Support for software would include the software license itself, maybe you pay that annually, and then also a maintenance fee that gives you access to code updates, bug patches or problem fixes, and major software upgrades, and also tech support so that you have someone to call at the manufacturer that can actually help resolve problems or help an IT administrator maybe use a feature or do something differently. So that's software. In hardware, it's all of that plus maybe also replacement of failed parts. So, you know, maybe a hard drive fails, maybe a memory fails, maybe a power supply fails. That actually happens fairly often. Maybe the whole box dies. So this is the hardware replacement, right? It would be included with the maintenance or the support cost. I differentiate those kind of things from consulting. Consulting to me is it's coming in and working with the customer to assess, to plan, to design for the future of what they need to meet the requirements of the business, to install, and then to provide maybe a local on-site support element in addition to your maintenance or support contracts with the manufacturer that produced the products.
Yeah, got it.
You know, having some local support from an engineer or a programmer. Those kind of things would fall under consulting, you know, planning, design, installation, and additional support provided by an on-site local person.
Gotcha. You know, in our business, a media company, we have support contracts with all of our providers. You know, it's true of any business. If you go down, you want to get back online as quickly as you can. As a media company, a minute makes a big difference to us. But we do have all of these support contracts in place. And one other one, too, that I don't think is particular to our business would be licensing agreements, right?
Yeah.
The software is proprietary, and that these licensing agreements should be figured in as part of the return on the investment as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
They certainly should. Now, do you guys typically use like a leasing program or capital?
Yeah, no, we use a leasing program. Our technology changes so quickly that we do a lot of lease option to buy or lease with a dollar buyout at the end, and that makes the most sense for us.
Yeah.
But analyzing, it's difficult today, Ray. You know, you don't know, unless there's an expert involved like yourself, you don't know whether that return on the investment is even there.
Yeah.
You know, when do you upgrade? You
Yes, and the only way to get close is to try to get to an apples to apples or get close to that is to kind of compartmentalize things, you know. So just talk about the phone system, just talk about the PCs or maybe a group of PCs. If you've got thousands in a large enterprise organization, you have to kind of compartmentalize these things. And the leasing programs are good because you can be constantly doing technology refreshes if you're working with a good finance organization. Just refresh your lease every year, get the old stuff off the lease, get the new stuff on, and just keep paying a monthly payment for your technology program, and it just kind of makes things easier.
Well, yeah, you know, in our business, we have that one added thing is that there's a learning curve every time that we do that also, which again says if you have a good consultant, if you have a good company that you work with, you can spool up that time that you spend relearning or learning new technologies or having the phone tell you when it's time for lunch, right?
Right.
Hey, I want to tell you we've been getting some interesting questions about these sessions. All of these segments are available on our website. Especially the last three, I think, are particularly important to anyone trying to analyze what their needs are if you're a business owner or part of a business or your responsibility in a company to make a proper assessment, figure out what the total cost of operation is, and then really figure out what the return on the investment is. So please go to our website. And the other thing we want to tell you, Ray and I, before we went on camera today, thought we're getting some interesting questions. So we're encouraging you to ask more questions. And I think we have a surprise. Maybe we'll bring in one of your techs
Yeah, let's bring in our chief technology architect and try to play Stump the Guru or something. I don't know, maybe one of our sessions. That would be fun, I think.
All right, so continue to ask questions, and we'll be glad to answer them when we can. One last thing, Ray is a guest speaker this Friday at something at Glenn Sanders Mansion, right?
That's correct,
What's
yeah.
going on?
The Albany Business First is hosting a session on family businesses. How do family businesses A, survive, and B, thrive and grow, and what are some of the obstacles and lenses that they have to go through, like succession and things like that. So we'll have a panel of experts and a group of about 250 people, and it'll be kind of an open conversation with some preset questions that'll be reviewed.
That's great. Any of you that watch Her Look, you'll know that we did a feature on Anise and Associates, the family members.
Yes, the owners.
Which is fun to watch. They get along great. What happened with that family? You got a great family.
Yeah, they do.
All right, thanks very much for coming in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks.
To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.